Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
So with the Paycheck Protection Program is in some ways worse. We have been crying out, my office has been pushing for transparency for this program from day one. And we finally got that data yesterday. And what did we learn? We learned that Paycheck Protection Program money designed to support and hold up the smallest businesses in our economy went to Trump and Kushner properties. And 600 million of it went to just 600, I want to get this right, 600 businesses.
Right.
600 businesses. Each got $10 million. 600 businesses each got $10 million, and yet we can't get the Senate Majority Leader to give people money to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head.
How do you stop that from happening again in terms of who gets the money? I'm told that the problem was that the money was given to banks, and for the banks to use the discretion of who to exercise unless you were taking care of any patronage or favors on the state side. So how do we not have that happen again?
Well, I'm a proponent of a somewhat different approach that would achieve, I think, the result we're aiming for even better. It's called the Paycheck Recovery Act. And what it would do is use the IRS as a tool, use the wage data that we already have to allow people to continue to receive their paycheck, even if they're unable to go to work or their business is shut down or they've been laid off. And this would take out the middleman of the banks. It would also make sure that the government funds are going directly to support payroll, to support wages, to keep families out of food bank lines and off the streets from being homeless. So this is a much more efficient way to spend the money, ensuring that those who need it get it.
Oh, but the Republicans will never cut out the banks. Why? There was one thing left out of that conversation. The banks were able to charge fees to their biggest customers who were borrowing this money. And that is why they chose the biggest customers and not the small business owners. That's why. That's why. So when I say that Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff are Obi-Wan Kenobi, what I'm telling you is they are our only hope for a successful Biden first 2 years. They are our only hope to get reform into the system and to get the money out of the system and into the hands of people who are suffering, who are facing eviction. And there's no eviction protection in Mitch McConnell's version of the next round of recovery money for Americans who are facing a massive casualty incident. There's nothing. You know what's in it? You know what's in it? You know what Mitch McConnell's focused on? Just what he told you he was focused on. Business liability protection. He doesn't want big ag or pork producers or the chicken, plants. He doesn't want the people there to be able to say that they are being put on the front line without proper PPE or without proper spacing between them, and that they sped up the lines because the demand was through the roof, right? And so they're getting COVID, or they're getting he doesn't want those workers to be able to go to those employers and complain when they get COVID. He wants business liability protection. And that's all this is a vehicle for. And you know how you know it? Because he won't appropriate any new money. He's saying to Mnuchin, go break the law and claw back this $500 billion, even though it's supposed to remain at Treasury. It's supposed to remain at the Federal Reserve for the people until 2026. But do it now, take it back, and I'll reappropriate it as new money, even though it's old money from the old CARES Act, and everybody will be bamboozled, and no one will know the difference. First of all, it's a quarter of what's needed. And second, it ain't new money. What really needs to happen is the $2 trillion tax cut has to be clawed back from the wealthiest Americans, not the small little, $50 break that some people got, not that money, but it's $2.2 trillion. So the $2 trillion comes back and goes into a recovery act for the American people. That cannot happen with Mitch McConnell as the majority leader. You know why? Because only the majority leader decides what goes on the floor. And Mitch McConnell will not put a $2 trillion recovery package for the American people who are waiting in line for every damn thing like we're some Soviet republic now. He will not put any bill like that on the floor. Therefore, no debate, no vote, no bill, no nothing. And it's been like this since May. So it's not like I'm trying to foresee the future. This is where we are, and he is why. And the only way to get rid of Mitch McConnell, as the majority leader anyway, is to elect Warnock and Ossoff in Georgia on January 5th, and then Mitch McConnell becomes the minority leader and has no say in what comes to the floor. Voting. It's called voting. So you're our only hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi, or as we now call it, Georgia. We're all living on Dan 2E is where we are. And Mitch McConnell is the freaking Death Star. He calls himself the Grim Reaper. He tells you what he is. Stan in Texas.
Hello. I love you, Randy.
Thank
Be
you.
cool. In Texas, the voter fraud was all committed, or the people trying to break the law in the voting places were all Trump supporters from what I saw when I went to vote.
Yeah.
They showed up in Trump T-shirts, Trump hats, MAGA maggots is what I like to call them, MAGA maggots. And one guy showed up with a MAGA maggot hat, with two little American flags taped on each side. And there were about a dozen of these people in this voting place that were expelled. They were the ones trying to break the laws. They were the ones trying to commit fraud. I think if in reality, if true sunshine were made on this voter fraud, we would see that it was Trump and Trump-Lizites that committed the fraud. That in actuality, in reality, the Biden team won by probably 10, 12 million votes.
Okay, so there was no fraud. Let me just put it that way. How's that? There was no fraud. You can't say they did fraud or this one did fraud. There was no fraud. There just wasn't. It didn't happen. Now, there was intimidation in the counting rooms. We know that because the Michigan poll workers recorded themselves almost in real time saying that the Trump challengers were challenging every freaking ballot, whether it was, there was nothing wrong with that, and that they were screaming and yelling, and the lawyers were running around, and it was a horrible environment. Go to RandyRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.